All right, what's up, Andrews? Yo, I know we can do better than that. Yo, what's good, Andrews? Oh, my goodness. It's Thursday. I get it, y'all. I get it. Look, we're almost there. This is like the home stretch before the weekend, all right? TGIF. It's almost Friday, y'all. Just bear with us a little longer, and I'm sure we're going to have a good weekend, all right? So we're so happy that you can join us today. As you can see, we have an awesome panel up here, and we'll introduce them in a bit. But so today, I just want to preface like our whole program. We're talking about why I love Jesus. And so, specifically today, if you guys looked at your app when you guys were signing up to kind of see what this topic was going to be about specifically, today we're going to be talking about why I love Jesus even when the church makes it hard to. Okay? And so today we're going to try to be as real as possible. We're going to try to be as honest as possible. This is by no means a conversation to start bashing or bagging on the church. It's more of encouraging a conversation of understanding where the church falls short. I know that many people in this room at some point have probably been hurt by the church, as well as other people, have decided to leave and have had a difficult time having an experience with Jesus as a result of someone else's bad testimony. And so today what we want to do more than anything is encourage a conversation and start a conversation moving forward. We don't have all the answers, okay? We want to preface that and let you guys know we're not experts. We're kind of just students here who wanna have a conversation and invite you guys into that conversation today. So I have a lovely panel up here. Can we give it up for our panel, y'all? They're so great. They're so great. Y'all don't even know them yet, but they're awesome. If I could start over here with, I don't want to say your name. You can introduce yourself, but what we're going to ask you guys to do right now is to say your name, what major. Oh, actually, you know what? Throw in what year are you too, and something that you're into.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brent. I'm in my senior year of medical lab science, so I'm really graduating students. And so what I'm into is food. I'm a huge foodie. I'm the type that will drive 2 hours just to try out something new.
My name is Rebecca Garcia. I am a sophomore studying bio-pre-med, and one thing that I'm into is singing. I love singing.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach. I guess I'm in the seminary. So my first year in the seminary, I'm doing my MDiv. I'm coming here from the warm state of Arizona. Amen. And
There's already kids out there, by the way.
PZ? got some
PZ's in the
Arizona
house.
people up here. And I would say, I guess one thing I'm interested in, is running. But I really love being married. Been married for 6 years. It's awesome. I highly recommend it.
That's so sweet. I wish Alicia was here. You know what? We're gonna live stream. She can see this later and just admire like, oh, I love my baby. It's awesome, awesome. All right, y'all. So, actually, you know what? I'll throw it out there too, in case people don't know who I am. My name is Kevin. I am also an MDiv student. I'm coming to the end of my first year here at Andrews. And something that I'm into, Brent, you literally took my thing. I love food. Something else that I'm into, I love K-dramas, and I'm not ashamed to say that I love Korean dramas, literally, all sorts. I love the romantic ones. Those are the good ones, so my favorite one that I watched like maybe a year ago was Oh My Venus. If you guys haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. It's so good. But anyway, so today, again, we're going to be talking about why we love Jesus, right? We're in this series called Why I Love Jesus. And so today, I'm curious, in short couple words or a couple sentences for you guys, and feel free to chime in. It doesn't have to be in any kind of order, but why do you guys love Jesus?
So I was thinking about this question earlier, and I think my love for Jesus has transitioned. I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor, so I definitely grew up with the environment of loving Jesus. Jesus was it, But I thought about it, and it was kind of like the love I had for Jesus when I was younger was the love I have for like extended family, where you just know you love them because they're your family. However, the love I have for Jesus now is more of like the love I have for like a friend, right? That they become family because of the relationship that I have with them. The trust, the dependence of like them being there kind of thing. So yeah, I think that I love Jesus because of the relationship that I have, that I have grown into with him.
For me, the reason why I love Jesus is I love the way he forgives and he forgets. And I don't know if you could resonate with me, but I am my worst critic. So sometimes it's very easy to keep track of all the things you've done wrong and kind of just bash yourself with it. But I love how God is the opposite of that. Once you see repentance, once he sees that you are very genuine about what you've done wrong, he completely writes it off his book. And I love that.
Hey, that's good. Wow. Yeah, I like, I'm kind of like Rebecca. I think there was a transition in my point of why I love Jesus now to why I started. I didn't grow up Seventh-day Adventist, so a big part of why I love Jesus growing up is because he gave me a purpose for living. He gave me a reason for existing, not just breathing. There was a purpose to my life. And now that I feel like I have that purpose, for me, I just simply love God because of who he is or who I've come to know him to be. And to me, he's amazing. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think it's awesome that everyone has like a different experience, right? No one walk with Jesus is the same. And so I like the fact that everyone has kind of mentioned a different aspect to their relationship with Jesus, and I think it's very eye-opening to see just how personal our relationship with Jesus is, because it looks differently from person to person, right? It's not like a one-size-fits-all, and we can get on to a whole other topic like that when we talk about Christianity, because it's not one-size-fits-all, right? Every person's relationship with Jesus is very different. And so when it comes to our walk with Jesus, and it comes to this whole thing called Christianity, and which is what we decide to be a part of because of this relationship with Jesus, right? It kind of just brings us in on that. We also understand that human beings are imperfect, right? Human beings by no means are saints, right? We mess up on a consistent basis, and so today, since we're talking about why we love Jesus in spite of when the church makes it hard to, right? I want to kind of just narrow in our conversation, because when we think about the church, a lot of people could mean a different thing to them depending on who you talk to, right? So we can talk about the big church, right? The institution, the idea of the church, right? This huge body that's scattered around the world. But at the same time, we can talk about that, but we can also talk about our local church, right? The church that we grew up in. Or if you don't go to church, right? It could be the church that you once went to and no longer go to. Or we can refer to the people that we have met. So other Christians, right? It could be friends, it could be strangers, it can be our parents, it could be teachers. And so I want to preface that when we're talking about why we love Jesus in spite of when the church makes it hard to, right? We're blanketing the statement to mean any of those things. It could be, again, the big church, big institution. It can be smaller scale, your local church, or even smaller, your friends, your parents, a mentor, someone who taught you Sabbath school or Sunday school, right? It can be any of those things. And so I guess the question to go to next would be, is why have you guys chosen to love Jesus even when the church makes it hard to?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I guess for me, talking about the church, I think people constitute the church. People are what make an organization. I would think for me, I guess the big thing is that people or the church does not determine my experience with Jesus, or they do not affect the goodness of God towards me. So even though someone might be mean to me or make the situation hard for me, that still doesn't determine how I feel like God moves in my life or how he responds to me. So I still feel like I can live like a great life with God despite how the church may be treating me. And I guess to nerd out a little bit, we see Jesus kind of face the same situation in the Gospels where the people who he came to save were mistreating him. But that didn't change the Father's love for him, nor his appreciation of what the Father, of what God meant to him. So I guess for me, that's one of the big reasons is, yeah, I did feel like it doesn't change. The way people respond to me does not change the way that God thinks of me. And more importantly, the way God thinks of me then gives me a purpose in responding despite how people, I guess, treat me. That makes sense.
I also resonate with that too. Sometimes it's easy to forget that the head of our church is God, and not our pastors, not anybody above us or may seem to be more spiritually knowledgeable as us. And I feel like we have an even bigger responsibility at a younger age because we are exposed to a lot of different types of people that people of older generation would have never really experienced. So the way they think about interacting with other people is very different to the way we interact with other people. And sometimes you can get backlash for that. But in the end, if God is the head of our church, we're brought together through his character and who he is. And sometimes it's very easy to fall in love with the community of our church.
Wow.
But that's full of imperfect people. Even though there are going to be times where you are uplifted by them and maybe God will speak through them, but in the end, your real source of comfort and love is God himself.
Yeah, so I agree with both of you guys. I also think that because my relationship with Jesus kind of grew, my relationship with Jesus is me and him, not me, him, and the entire church. So even though the church plays a part of the community and loving one another, serving one another, and definitely Jesus' love can be shown through them to me or from me to them. I think the love that I have for Jesus is dependent more on the relationship that I have with him, just not so much what the church does or does not do. And then the other thing that I was talking to a friend a couple months ago, and she was having a hard time kind of dealing with the church because of the pressure of being perfect or, I don't know, a lot of things that I feel we get from the church. I was she was wanting change, but something that that came to mind in that moment was the change that we want and the respect or that just understanding that we want from the people from the church is the same thing we should give to them. Because I know it's for me it's kind of hard to understand people when they're not being understanding. So it's kind of it's hard for me to understand why someone is not understanding. But if you put yourself in the position of okay, let me try to understand why they're not being understanding or why they're having a hard time with this, it also makes it easier to relate to them. But yeah, I think that my love to Jesus is actually dependent on my relationship with him, not what people do or don't do, because yeah, everyone has a personal relationship with him.
That's good. It's interesting because as I was listening to all of you, oh man, there's so many different things that we can go in different directions. But one of the things that Brent you mentioned was how sometimes we fall in love with the community, right? And we idealize the community so much, right? And so for some of us, we have found community in church, or maybe we found community here at Andrews, right? And we're surrounded by a bunch of Christians, or Adventists, however way you choose to identify yourself, right? But what I wonder then is two things. Number one, how does that happen? Right? How does that naturally develop where we end up falling in love with the community? And what would you guys say could be some things that we can do to kind of check ourselves to make sure that we're not confusing, falling in love with the community with falling in love with Jesus? Because I feel like if we end up falling in love with the community so much, right, and Jesus kind of takes the back burner, that's what ends up happening for many people, right? They end up moving away from church because they were burned by the community. And so that tie splits them between them and Jesus because of their love for community.
I think it's a way of how we approach on how we want to be comforted. It's very easy when you're surrounded by a very faith-based community of people who already have a set standard on how this is how you treat people, right? But what about for someone who might not fit the profile of, let's say, an Adventist? How do you fit into an Adventist community, much less a whole campus full of Adventists? And that's very hard. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen, because I know people who were like that, the biggest mistakes I've seen is that they try to find someone that can resonate with them. And I think that's a little dangerous, because you're already very different yourself. It's going to be very hard to find that in a much bigger scale. And I think the easiest way to do this is wait until God provides you with somebody. You know, I think that's the beauty of our community. We don't go to people, we provide ourselves to people. And that's how God convicts us. When someone is in a rut and needs to find an actual a person for support, I think it's natural to have to just pray to God, and then someone will just come into their life, not searching out just only to find yourself being disappointed. I think that's why I believe a relationship with God first is so much more important than trying to find your community, trying to find your clique. Because the more you are in tune with God, the more He is more willing to bring people into your life that will be appropriate to where you are standing, where you identify yourself as, and probably become a better component to your journey towards understanding Him more.
Yeah, Brent's dropping fire right now. He's getting me thinking. Yeah, it's similar to kind of piggyback off that experience, to share a personal experience. I didn't grow up Seventh-day Adventist, and so when my parents sent me to an Adventist summer camp before my freshman year of high school, of attending an Adventist school for the first time, or one of the first times, I didn't know anybody at the summer camp, and it was super awkward. And I think God, in His mercy, just speaking about praying, wanting to know somebody, He brought two people into my life who actually cared about me. Somehow they knew my name, which may have been a little bit creepy. This is before Instagram, MySpace. Knew my name. And
they don't know about that.
I know, I just dated myself. Knew my name, and they befriended me, and that meant the world to me, and those two guys are still some of my best friends to this day. And just to give a biblical example, I think of the story, I could be wrong, it's either Elisha or Elijah, where his community of believers failed him. And he left that entire community, ran away, went into the wilderness to basically die in isolation, apart from everybody. And there's that whole joke that God brought him hamburgers and made him take a nap, and that fixed him. Food and sleep solves everything, they say. But he also brought him a widow and her son, who provided Elijah the community that he needed. And it was actually a give and take relationship, because not only were they there for him, so he wasn't isolated, but he was also able to bless them. So I think sometimes when we seek for community, we're seeking for something that just meets our needs, but sometimes we don't ask, what can I do to also be a blessing to the people around me? So I'm not just taking, I'm also giving.
Yeah, I agree. Just real quick, is that God is a provider, and we are the pool of vessels that He's going to use to serve other people. And you need to be ready for that. So.
I think that one way that we fall in love with a community is just the space that they provide. With a community of Christian believers, you share the same values, so you're not constantly having to be peer pressured, in certain ways, or you can just freely talk about what you believe, and I don't know, a lot of those different types of safe spaces. That's one way you can fall in love with a community. Also, I think when they show up for you, right? More than you show up for them, it's you just feel that immense love pouring out onto you. I think it becomes tricky when you don't have, or when you think that because you're around them, and let's just say you're talking about Jesus all the time or whatever, that you think that that's enough. and then you don't have to take your own personal time to relate to Jesus and to struggle with Jesus, kind of thing. And that's where it becomes tricky when they do something to you, and your entire relationship of Jesus is dependent on them because it has been through them instead of you with God yourself. So that would, because like if your view of Jesus is based on what they do and how they love and things like that, it will hurt you because we are imperfect. No matter how much loving we are or kind we are, we will fail at some point. I think like not carrying out your personal relationship with Jesus and depending on the community is one way that it ends up affecting us when they end up failing.
I think it makes it a little harder, because I completely agree with what you just said. I think it makes it a little harder though when you have new believers, right, that first come into the church, right, and the church is already supposed to, its job, right, the need that it's making is to create community, to create opportunities for people to feel welcomed, to feel like they belong. It's difficult when you're new to believing in Jesus, right? Or you've been away for a while and whatever, like you've had a bad experience and whatnot, and you're recently coming back into it, right? And it's difficult when you're new. You don't necessarily have that experience with Jesus yet, and it's harder when our church, right? The people aren't necessarily living up to, I guess, I don't want to say a standard because there isn't necessarily one standard, right? But living out, the mission that Jesus gave us of loving others, and the Bible says that the world will know us by our love, right? The way that we love one another. And so it makes it a little harder when you have new people coming into the church and, Christians aren't being perfect. And so I guess the following question that we can transition to is, because we talked about, why you guys choose to continue to love Jesus even when the church makes it hard to. But what do you do in those moments when the church does make it hard to? What do you do in those moments where other people kind of do something that may, for some people it may automatically turn them off away from the church or from having a relationship with Jesus? I want to frame it that way. Some people might be turned away from having a relationship with Jesus. What have you guys done in those moments to keep you guys rooted in that relationship in spite of when other people make it hard to?
I mean, I would say that I go to Jesus about it. So I go to him with my frustrations kind of thing, and I talk it or pray it out with him. I think I go to my closest people, and then I tell them my experience, and usually from their counsel, they'll redirect me back to Jesus kind of thing. But I think taking it to Jesus is a good way to keep him in the loop and making, he'll obviously, tell you, okay, look at me, because I am the way, right? Not the people, but I am the way. But I think, just struggling, not being afraid of questioning and why would these people do this? Why is the church like this? And not being afraid of asking questions, I think is a way that I've struggled with that.
Yeah, I would say a big thing that I try to do that's really hard for me is I try to never isolate myself. So when I'm feeling hurt by somebody or a community, I try to make sure, kind of like Rebecca was saying, I try to make sure I can reach out to that inner core group or that person that I can trust that can really walk with me through that process. Because I remember before transitioning into undergrad, at least for me, I was really hurt by a community that meant so much to me. As a matter of fact, one of the individuals was the person who brought me to the church, who brought me into it. And, they're no longer in the church either. And I was going through this big just transition in my life, what's going on? And I remember I did reach out to somebody personally. And it was actually my pastor, who's my homie. And he was able to journey with me all summer to kind of guide me through that process. And kind of having that close relationship with him, kind of like you're describing, gave me hope, because it's like, oh man, not all people suck. Out of the billions of people in this world, there's at least some, even Jesus' little posse of 12, they sucked. They left him, some betrayed him. But there's at least one or two people in the world, and that's all that matters. I know they're there for me, and I know they're able to help me. So that's really assisted me in the journey.
Yeah, so something I find really interesting, and when you were saying it, was that when a community hurt you, you went to community.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we're like, okay, community, we shouldn't depend on community. It's just like Jesus, like that's what I was just saying previously. But it's interesting to see that it's like, I heard somewhere that you can't have Christianity without community. Like you can't isolate yourself in a room with just Jesus and then be perfectly fine. Like, if you're around people, you have to reach out or share that with people. So it's interesting to see that in your experience, you went to community. Maybe it was smaller and more personal, and but it's still, you reached out to community when community had hurt you.
I totally resonate with all of those too. It's my little pet peeve when it comes to new believers. For us as Seventh-day Adventists. This is one thing that I've started to notice, especially with our denomination. We take a lot of pride in biblical truth. We rap about it all the time, and I agree to the biblical truth. That's why I'm here, because I resonate with those truths that we also share. But sometimes those exact same truths can become the actual walls that keep us from reaching other people that don't fit that profile.
Mercy.
So this is my main thing I want to point out, is that truth without love is just harshness. I think that truth is a way to affirm your values, but it also doesn't show, it just shows that you're in denial of your flaws. And I think that's why I love looking at Jesus, is because he was so radical about the truths he said. Because the kind of stuff he said would have got him put in jail, if it wasn't for the grace of his Father. But what I think is so beautiful is that God was so radical about his truth because he was also radical about his love for other people. The kind of people he sat down at the table with were probably people that we would have never sat down with. And I think that's something we need to learn, especially that if you want to speak biblical truth to someone who's new to Christianity, you have to earn it. You have to build that love, that passion, that compassion that you have for them, so that when you may say something that might not coincide with how they identify themselves as, that may not coincide with their values, they know that when you say those things, it's coming from love and not from pure ignorance. So if you want to, it's very you want to be very sensitive when we are working with people who are just starting out in their Christian journey, because it's very easy to turn them away with because we have some truths that are very hard set, and sometimes it takes a while to understand, and it requires a lot of God working in your life before you can actually really grasp it in your head. And it's not our job to just smash it down in their faces and then expect them to just agree with it. But yeah.
Man, this is so good. So one of the things that comes to my mind as we're talking about all this, right? And we're talking about, because we've kind of we kind of revolved around the idea of when the church has hurt us, right? But let's be honest, we're also part of the church. So I kind of want us to kind of resonate on the idea, the fact that because we're the church, we've also hurt other people. And I guarantee you, like in this room, at some point or another, we've done that. Maybe unintentionally, and I think most of the time we can agree that the church does this unintentionally. I'm not going to say every time, right? There are times where they do it on purpose and it's not the greatest thing, but I think sometimes unintentionally we end up hurting other people. And because again, we all fall under this. We are part of the church. We are the church, right? And then the funny thing is, like, especially with our church, we always talk about how the young people are the future. It's like, no, we're here, we're now, we're relevant. We are the church. And sometimes I feel like we get it twisted because we create this separation and say like, oh, the church hurt me, not realizing that we have unintentionally also hurt other people in the process. And so one of the things that I think we should be mindful of is just this idea that when we do talk about truth, right, and we're presenting quote unquote truth to somebody, like you said, right, truth without love is harshness. It's an interesting idea because the thing that comes to my mind is it productive? Is you saying this to someone else productive? Or is it just doing it for the sake of sticking true to truth, right? I think all of us have some part to play. And I think right now, as we think about what the future of the church looks like, right? We're the present. We're here. We're right now. We're relevant. We're unfortunately, we have a huge exodus going away from the church, right? Of a lot of young people our age leaving. And so I guess the big question or the big thing that I think we need to understand and ask ourselves is, what kind of church do we want to see 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because if we're not happy with the church now, right, or we're struggling right now with our relationship with Jesus, and I think we can reframe it in that sense, when it comes to our relationship with Jesus, what needs to change, or what ideally would it look like in the future, right? How does my relationship with God ultimately influence what the future will look like, not only for myself, but what it means for my peers, what it means for my family, what it means for my future marriage, my future kids and whatnot, right? As we think about this, as we think about the future and whatnot, and what Jesus is doing in our lives now, what are some active things that we can take into consideration? Or what ideals can we adopt in our own relationship with God now as we move forward to create a change, to create a better church in the future? Because I feel like if there's going to be a change in the future, it has to start now. And most importantly, if there's going to be that change to make the church better, it has to start with Jesus. So for you, what does that look like for yourself? And I guess if there's anything that you can encourage our people out here to start now in their own relationship with Jesus as they work towards the future.
It's a big question. So something that kind of came up this morning in class, and that's kind of been true in my life, is hurt people hurt people. So oftentimes, a lot of the pain that we cause other people is simply a projection of the pain that we're currently experiencing. And I think there is a misnomer behind the passage with 1 John 1:9, he who confesses his sin, Jesus is faithful and just to forgive him his sins and cleanse him from all unrighteousness. I think we mix in this idea of confession, like if I can, it's more, in the West, we think of things more as a jurisdiction. It's done, it's settled, now we're done away with, we're kind of walk away from it. But we fail to recognize the Judeo aspect of healing a community. Sin isn't just like getting forgiven and then moving on. There's this process of cleansing and healing that takes place, almost like a reconstruction. I think a popular word is deconstruction. So I think there needs to be some healing that needs to take place in our own lives in order for us to develop a church that is healthy and thriving. I think there's this book out right now that a lot of my friends told me to read by Rich Villodas, which is the Deeply Formed Life. It's so good, and he talks about just our need for personal self-awareness, because if we're not self-aware about our own experience, we're just kind of going around and like hurting the people around us, which is why Jesus says, don't look at the speck in your brother's eye and ignore the plank that is in your own eye, because you're going around just like whacking people with this thing, and not even intending to, but that's what's actually, there's some pain that's going on with you. So I think being serious about our own healing personally in whatever capacity. This morning I read a statistic in class that 75% of effective healing therapy takes place in therapeutic relationships, aka in some type of healthy community. 25% of actual therapy that we think takes place, 25% of that only actually takes place in more of a professional setting. Now, I'm all pro therapy, but that just means I think in our relationships, we need to be intentional about our own healing, our own process of healing. Before we can start like correcting and judging other people and doing what we want to do with them, we have to be serious about what's going on with you and me. So I think that would be the first takeaway I have for myself personally. Be serious about my own healing, and how can I develop a healing and healthy community that can extend that to a larger world.
I really like that. I think that if we take that concept that you just said and apply it to our lives, we can see how the church starts changing. I think one thing for me, it's like you were saying, right, that it's like you're asking the question, what would I want it to be in the future? But I think for the future to happen, also like you were saying, it needs to start now. And when we do something like that, like analyzing ourselves and healing ourselves, and then from that be an extension of healing to other people, that is what will create a community. Because we can sit here and talk about like how perfect we want the future to be, but if we don't actually do anything about it in like the healing and the community and the understanding and love, because like I see that there's a lot, like we see a lot in churches that they're very exclusive. We're not really inclusive many times, and to be able to be inclusive, you have to be able to recognize where you yourself is lacking, and not put up this like high horse of like I'm better than everyone else kind of thing. But that starts from the individual, because if we have many individuals that are on this like high horse of I'm better than you, then we're gonna have an entire church that's like that. But I think that love is also very influential in the sense of like if there's one person, in this case myself or every one of you here, if there's one person that is really emanating true love and understanding, other people will catch on to that. And I think that's what can start like this wildfire of like love and understanding in communities. Yeah.
I love that too. I think the future of our church ought to be that love and understanding. I think, to me, what we need to work on is creating a space. I've thought about it more, and I've learned that the best way you can reach somebody, especially in a church, is to be the deacon rather than the pastor. Sometimes it's better off for you creating a space of love and acceptance and let Jesus take the podium. And it's very easy when you know you can do so much more. But sometimes I've felt like when I've tried to, and these are friends that who are still getting their. I've had friends who are still getting their, starting their journey with as being a Christian, and sometimes you get a little excited, and you start taking on Jesus roles that you shouldn't be taking, and you can, but it's going to be limited. And so that's why I want to ask you is maybe sometimes you should also think if the kind of effort you are putting in, is it hindering God's space, God's ability and opportunity to reach their lives? So that's what I've been trying to work on a bit more. Even like if I don't have the answers to everything, all I know is that like the best thing I can do for other people is to create a space for them to see Jesus. And I think, and it's a simple thing too. It's just maybe sparking a conversation with somebody, and then maybe at the end, an invitation to proximity, or maybe to a Vespers, or maybe to a Bible study. You don't gotta drag them along with you. But I think that's that beautiful thing about deacons. We are redemptive Christians. Their job is to invite people to the church. The rest of the heart-changing applications it all rests on God. And I think that's the podium that you should leave to Him.
Awesome. We're gonna thank you so much, guys. That was great. I think to kind of wrap this up, everything that we've kind of said right now, I feel like it comes down to, right, if we want an ideal future for what we want other people and what we would like the church to look like and exemplify in their own relationship with Jesus, it kind of starts now with the decisions we make in our own personal walk with Jesus. And I think in order to make those decisions, I feel like we need to have a clear and beautiful view of who Jesus is. So as a wrap up, before we let people go, and as soon as we're done, we'll have a word of prayer and get going. But in a few words, who is Jesus to you? And maybe that can encourage someone else as they begin their walk, as they begin their new journey and discovering why they love Jesus. Maybe hearing you guys speak on who Jesus is to you can be that inspiration. So in a few words, who is Jesus to you?
I think Jesus holds like the place of many different things to me, or not things, but like positions, I guess. Like I think it depends like on what part of life I'm in, like the stage or the period. Right now, he is a father, and so what that means to me is like someone that takes care of me or provides. So my provider, father, is who he is.
I think Jesus to me, I think Jesus is the church when the church is closed for the day, to me.
I like that. That's good. I don't know. I feel like I'm just going to give this response. I don't know. Jesus is like, for me, at least the way I posture myself with him is he's like a mentor to me. He's someone there right now in this process of like, almost like a consultant. Like he's guiding me and helping me make these decisions in my life that are going to be important for me and my family.
Awesome. Well, hey, actually, before, I think for me, I will say that to me, Jesus is essentially my therapist, man. Jesus is my therapist. I love going to my therapist, but Jesus is a real one. And I think no matter what I'm going through, no matter what difficult of a time I'm going through, no matter what season of life is going on, I know that I can turn to him and he'll be able to bring both the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, even the physical healing. And I think that's what's so beautiful. And so can we give a round of applause for our panel? Thank you guys so much. I hope this was constructive for y'all. I hope you guys got something from this, and I hope this encourages you to begin your own walk with Jesus and how to live that out in your own life. So before we let you go, let me just have a quick word of prayer, and we'll be out of here. So let's ask God to be with us today. Father God, we want to thank you so much for the conversations we've had. We thank you, Lord, for allowing us to be transparent, being honest, and be honest about the fact that the church isn't perfect. We've been hurt by the institution. Some of us have been hurt by parents, have been hurt by teachers, have been hurt by individuals. But I pray, God, that more than anything, we don't lose focus, that the reason why the church exists is because of you. And you call us to have a relationship with you. And so, God, as we explore, as we leave this place and begin to have conversations out of here about how we can better have a relationship with you in spite of when people make it difficult. I pray, God, that you may touch our hearts, that you may inspire us, Lord, and that you may send people in our lives that can lift us up after other people have torn us down. And I pray, God, that we can do better so that the tearing down process doesn't happen, that we can continue to build each other up as we continue to have this beautiful and amazing walk with Jesus. We love you so much, God, and we pray these things in your name. And everybody said, amen, amen.